all you literary legends and luminaries. I'm Julie, and welcome to another episode of Booksmart. Today's book is about a legend, River Phoenix. It's called Last Night at the Viper Room, River Phoenix and the Hollywood He Left Behind by Gavin Edwards. River Phoenix is of my era. I remember being smitten with him in Stand By Me and when he grew his hair out, confusing him initially with Christian Slater, who's also a cutie patootie. I also clearly remember when the news reported that River had died right outside Johnny Depp's bar, the Viper Room, and since I was gloriously in love with Johnny Depp, I knew all about the Viper Room. Here's a clip for those of you who may not remember.
The 23-year-old Phoenix collapsed early this morning and died a short time later. It happened outside a West Hollywood nightclub. Phoenix's friends say he had been acting strangely shortly before he collapsed.
The main reason the book intrigued me is because while River Phoenix was the central topic of the book, he wasn't the only focus, at least based on the title. Because I was so familiar with all the actors in movies and MTV of that time period, I snatched the book off the shelf of my local used bookstore. Buying this book was a no-brainer. If you read a lot of biographies, Last Night at the Viper Room is an excellent one to read for its style. A couple years ago, I read Edwards' biography about MTV's original VJs, which I adored, but I don't know if that was just because it was about MTV or if I loved the style in which Edwards wrote. Regardless, I really enjoyed Gavin Edwards' approach to writing about River Phoenix. First, let me debrief you on River Phoenix in case you're unfamiliar with him. River was born in 1970 to a hippie family. He was the first of 5 children. You may know his younger brother, Joaquin, who once went by Lee Phoenix. River starred in Stand By Me, My Own Private Idaho, Running on Empty, and I Liked Little Nikita. He was the ultimate tree hugger, literally. He was vegan, starred in PETA commercials, and like much of young Hollywood, developed a horrible drug problem. He died of an overdose right outside the Viper Room, a Hollywood hotspot, when he was only 23 years old. Edwards explains that Phoenix's death may have given him James Dean status, but because Stand By Me is River's most memorable movie, it doesn't always connect with viewers as River Phoenix since River was so young in it. And when Kurt Cobain shot himself about 6 months later after River died, Cobain became, in Edwards' words, the symbol of snuffed potential. Anyone who didn't grow up in the 80s may know little about River Phoenix. I was a River Phoenix fan and knew much about him at the time when he was creating movies. I thought I might have saved some pictures of him, but I didn't. On the back of this Johnny Depp poster from his 21 Jump Street days, which I did save, River is on the cover. This is from 1988, so he still looks pretty young. Too bad I didn't save any pictures of him, although I did save one of Christian Slater. I didn't like River as much in his later days as he appeared too scruffy and greasy, much more grungy like Kurt Cobain. In any case, I learned quite a bit from Edwards' biography, especially intriguing details surrounding those in River's orbit. Edwards' biographical style was lovely. While he develops River's childhood and then chronicles the rest of River's short life, he integrates what other key players in Hollywood were also doing, those that were River's age or those that he hung out with. You learn snippets of Martha Plimpton, who dated River, Ione Skye, and Samantha Mathis, who was his girlfriend when he died. You learn about those actors whose careers seem to parallel with River's, with brief mentions of Christian Slater and Will Wheaton and the 2 Coreys. I learned much about Leonardo DiCaprio, who I did not know essentially filled the void left by River. And of course, we learn about Johnny Depp and how the Viper Room came to be. There's lots of name dropping in this book in regards to pop culture, the Brat Pack and the likes of Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. In fact, I wish there would have been more of those details since those were the details that showed how some actors weren't swallowed up by Hollywood. Edwards used them as a comparison, how Will Wheaton and Ethan Hawke distanced themselves from that Hollywood lifestyle at critical moments in their careers, how Leonardo DiCaprio said no thanks to Hocus Pocus and went for What's Eating Gilbert Grape instead. Truly lovely details that paint a complicated picture of Hollywood and its young actors. Not all of them developed drug problems and focused on fame. All of these details are beautifully integrated into River's story. I've never read another biography that seems to do this so well, so seamlessly, with a strong voice that isn't textbooky. Edwards' chapters are short, and some of his chapters or part of his chapters are written in italics, painting the picture of whatever scene is occurring. It might be a scene at the Viper Room or one of River's movies. Edwards even includes a commercial for PETA. I'll read you a part of it since I am such an animal lover, but it captures this essence of River very beautifully. So I will read the beginning of the commercial. River Phoenix walks down a wooded path, accompanied by two large dogs, a German Shepherd and a Doberman German Shepherd mix. He calls for the dogs, Justice and Jupiter, to come along. The camera cuts to a close-up. River rubs a dog's neck and kisses it on the top of its nose. "Hello, I'm River Phoenix," he says, and swallows uncertainly, as if he's trying out the name for the first time. He's wearing black jeans, black boots, and a white People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals sweatshirt with a microphone clipped to it. His hair is long but tucked behind his ears. He's glowing as if there's a 40-watt bulb concealed in his esophagus. And if you care about animals, here's some good news. People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals can show you some easy ways to help out. And then he continues on with the commercial. Edwards really captures River Phoenix's magnetism and this light that he has. It's such a delight to read. I learned much about River's childhood. I didn't know that he was sort of anointed as the family's breadwinner. I knew they moved around a lot and even practically lived in the jungles of Venezuela. They were part of the Children of God for a while, and River was sexually abused during this time. I didn't realize River was as uneducated as others said. River was intelligent, but had little foundation for the world around him, like history and such. It's assumed River had dyslexia. River's public persona differed much from his personal one, which is also cliched in the Hollywood lifestyle. At times, he would only eat fruits and vegetables, yet hid his drinking and smoking and obviously his drug use from the public, although everyone in Hollywood knew better. He longed to be a musician first and foremost, which ironically was not something I remembered about him. Maybe I knew that, maybe I didn't. His band's name was Alika's Attic, which I have no memory of whatsoever. I knew Johnny Depp's first love was music and that he just happened to fall into A Nightmare on Elm Street and that he hated being a teen idol on 21 Jump Street. I didn't realize River Phoenix had so many similarities with Johnny Depp. River was choosy with his movie choices, but not quite enough according to Edwards. Everyone hated Little Nikita. Yes, it's like a made-for-TV movie, but I actually really liked it. Maybe that speaks to my 11-year-old taste at the time. River's acting and behind-the-scenes stuff is sort of like method acting. He goes deep into the parts. He would continue to wear clothes of his characters and even admitted that it would take him a few days to become River again. But the part in the book that fascinated me the most was the Keanu Reeves and Matthew Perry stuff. Partly because I love when books seem to interact with each other even though they are written years apart. It's like one book enhances another or references another or reveals another side of the story. I just adore that. And the other reason, well, I'm still trying to ascertain Perry's complete disgust for Keanu Reeves. Last Night at the Viper Room was written in 2013. Matthew Perry's book wasn't published until 2022. Edwards mentions Perry only once in passing and never describes Perry as part of River's inner circle of friends or even outer circle of friends. As far as I could tell based on Edwards' book, they were not even really acquaintances except on A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon. However, Edwards develops a lot about Keanu Reeves and River's relationship. They started My Own Private Idaho together, which in the early 90s was a rather startling film. It's about two male hustlers. I watched it so long ago, I have very little memory of it. Keanu was more concerned how the press would interpret his part, yet some believed River's androgynous behavior may have indicated he was bisexual. In other words, River was not the least concerned with how his sexuality might have been questioned after the film. Edwards never describes Keanu's reactions to River's death, only that he came to the funeral in a limousine. Michael Stipes, the lead singer of REM, was apparently so distraught over River's death that he didn't write songs for months. I had no idea they were close friends. I guess Tiger Beat and Sassy magazines didn't tell you everything back in the day. I'm guessing River's death impacted Matthew Perry on a deeply profound level because Perry and River were just 1 year apart in age. If Perry was beginning his descent into drugs by then, which I don't know how bad it was at that point in time for him, then that might have struck Perry in a relatable way. No one denies River's star power. He really does have that James Dean quality about him. However, in those last few months, everyone saw how changed River was. Physically, he looks sickly and his acting is paying the price. Maybe Perry thought Keanu should have reacted differently, more public in his grief. Edwards mentions nothing of Keanu taking time off from Speed, so maybe that wasn't a publicized fact at the time, or maybe that was a detail Edwards chose not to write. And perhaps I'm obsessing over a minor detail, some ridiculous remark in Perry's autobiography. Yet now with Perry's death, where drugs obviously played a part, it seems so sad and wasteful. You wish River's death would have impacted young Hollywood more than it did, but instead it was just another casualty of the lifestyles of the rich and famous. We care, but only for a brief moment, until another death trumps the first. We've grown so accustomed to Hollywood drug overdoses that we barely react, which in itself is so sad. I was shocked when I found out Matthew Perry died, but the shock quickly wears off. What did we expect when so many people in Hollywood use drugs? We're jaded, plain and simple. We're more shocked by Kurt Cobain committing suicide, yet even that seems somewhat expected. I call it the Richard Cory complex. You know the poem from Edwin Arlington Robinson, where everyone is envious of Richard Cory's money and power, yet the poem ends with Richard Cory shooting himself? River Phoenix had that complicated childhood. I suppose so many of us do. He suffered trauma, yet excelled in the arts of acting and music, yet even he couldn't keep the paradox of his two personas from battling each other. It's just so horrible that the drug-addicted part of him won. Edwards summarizes Phoenix's The Golden Age, as he calls it, with this brief yet very powerful passage of River Phoenix, Light and Impact. An actor and a role exist in symbiosis, finding a way to live together that benefits both. But if an actor gives enough blood to a part, it can become a parasite, not letting go and fundamentally changing its host. River had wanted to put more of himself into his roles. With Birdlace, he had succeeded to stunning effect on the screen, but now Birdlace didn't want to be cut loose. Bobby Bukowski, the cinematographer for Dogfight, became close friends with River and saw the aftermath of the film. After Dogfight, I remember thinking he was being a real jarhead asshole, Bukowski said. It took a month for him to become sweet again. This was the golden age of River Phoenix, when every aspect of his life seemed blessed. He had come into his own as an actor and seemed to have found a way to pick roles outside the Hollywood studio factory. Alika's Attic kept getting better, and Island remained encouraging. He and Solgit were blissfully happy together. When he drank or used drugs, it seemed like an indulgence rather than an addiction. The years he spent in the Children of God had not defined his life as an adult. If he hadn't saved the planet yet, well, he had time. One day you just wake up and you feel your age, River said of his new balance and maturity. I woke up and it was like, wow, I feel 20. What a fucking relief. I just love Edward's style and how he integrates all this stuff into one brief little passage. He ends the biography with those that River left behind. I had no idea that Leonardo DiCaprio may have taken parts intended for River. Choosing Christian Slater as the interviewer in Interview with a Vampire is almost shocking, since Christian Slater has the same exact hair and similar jaw as River. It's almost tacky that they did that. But Slater realizes it himself and donates his paycheck to River's favorite charities. My only criticism of Edward's book is I wish he would have utilized more of the technique he used in the beginning with the italicized scenes unfolding. He doesn't do much of those in the last third of the book. Maybe by then River's drug use had already destroyed so much of River's life that Edwards chose not to forever immortalize such moments. And since this book is steeped with pop culture references, you know me, I would have liked even more tidbits than Edwards gave us. The book is only 237 pages long. With Edwards' writing style, I could have easily read another 50 pages of details and comparisons. Since the subtitle of this book is River Phoenix and the Hollywood He Left Behind, it does read too quickly once River has died. I realize you don't want to drag out the ending unnecessarily, but it would have been very interesting to read more about how Kurt Cobain's suicide sort of took over everything, more development on the societal reaction to River's death. He does tell us what happened to the Viper Room, which I knew Johnny Depp lost interest in, but I didn't know the legal details. And maybe even a more dramatic comparison with James Dean. James Dean died in a car crash with no drugs involved, yet he is almost as iconic as Marilyn Monroe, who probably did die with drugs involved. Is it the drugs that caused us to move on so quickly? Or was society so different in 1993 than in 1955? I do love when books make me think well beyond the information in the book. Ultimately, I would recommend Last Night at the Viper Room. If you are a River Phoenix fan, this is a must-read. Edward does a beautiful job capturing all sides of River and archiving his talent and potential. If you are a child of the 80s and think fondly of those times, this book is a must-read. If you are not born in the 80s but have fallen in love with the times for one reason or another, this is a great book. as a starting point. If you love biographies, I would highly recommend Last Night at the Viper Room, even if you're not into River Phoenix. Edward's style of writing and how he puts Hollywood together around River Phoenix is excellently crafted. You'll learn a lot from this book, even if you think you are a living expert on the 80s, like me. Thanks for watching. My goal at Booksmart is to get a little bit smarter, one book at a time.
When the night has come